Okay, all right, folks. All right, gentlemen. I want us to go all the way back. As a political risk analyst, among the many other things you do as a governance specialist, Professor Ogola, and an economist, all these things cannot function without a healthy understanding of our history, our past. So I want us to go back in history. And for the Kenyans that perhaps may be unfamiliar with some of the things that happened and how we got here, I want us to cast our minds back, the year that we gained the right to to govern ourselves. And then a few months later, I think it was 6 months later, now independence, proper. Talk to me about, let's start with you, Professor Ogola. I mean, take us back to the Kenya of those days. We're just fresh off the colonial period, just on the tail end of that. And here we are as a country, the idea that we could govern ourselves. Tell me how powerful that idea was to the people back then. I know right now it may not be a big deal to a lot of people, but we're trying to unpack the significance of Madaraka and self-rule. Talk to us about just how powerful that concept of being able to govern yourselves would have been for our forefathers.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that there was no such a good thing as self-rule. I've had people who compare and say that maybe we took our independence too early. We were not yet mature enough to govern ourselves, and that's why we're having the teething issues we have, and that's why the aspirations we had with our founding fathers has never been fulfilled. But as an economist, I disagree. I believe that the worst thing that ever happened to Africa is that for more than 100 years or so, they were not able to rule themselves to define their direction, because people talk about development as only economic development. But can you imagine development whereby you lose your language, you lose your traditions? Some of our traditions were branded to be evil. Like, for example, you see, the people used to worship God, but God was seen as a symbol of the sun. So the white man comes and says that you guys are worshiping the sun. No. Even in the Christian prayer, do they have morning prayer, then afternoon prayer, then evening prayer? And this is defined by the sun. Morning when the sun rises. Midday when the sun is just right in the middle. And then evening when the sun sets. But for us, we are also seeing it the same way, only that they are now saying we are worshiping the sun. We're not worshiping, we're worshiping God. So we lost a lot of things, our beliefs. If you look, for example, how the Western influence in terms of education, in terms of culture and tradition, has affected the national fabric of a country. So I still believe that it was good that we rule ourselves early. There come some countries in Africa that was never colonized, like Ethiopia. Ethiopia was not colonized. So if you say that we took our independence too early, what about countries that were never colonized at all? So the self-rule was such an important thing that seeing your own African, like now we have President William Ruto, head of state, head of government. Before, you could be seeing a white man. If this didn't happen, you could be still seeing a white man in Homa Bay presiding over this ceremony. So I would see this was something big. Then they ask themselves, when you talk about self-rule, the priorities of the white man, for sure would be the priorities of the black man. So then they define the priority.